Marilyn, play.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this next installment in our Black History program. Tonight, as you might have gathered from the information that you've received, we are having a theme of soul-to-soul connection. Now, I have to say at the outset that whilst this is part of our Black History program, we are not in any way suggesting that soul-to-soul, which is a separate initiative, we are not making any recommendations. But for us, there is a need for us as a community to engage with each other in ways that aren't readily available in this kind of environment we live in. So certainly, if you go back to Africa and the Caribbean, we have more traditional ways in which we engage with each other. Now, in this environment that we've got with the dispersal of our community, we do need to look at new ways in which we can engage with each other as people who are sons and daughters of Africa. So tonight, you are actually going to be hearing about one of those ways in which we can do that. And for me, I certainly would encourage people to engage with these kinds of mechanisms, because actually we have to do it together. It is important that as a community we come together and we can achieve together, as we say within our motto, within the Watford African Caribbean Association. So, to repeat myself, I think my name is Clive Saunders. So I'm the chair of the Watford African Caribbean Association, an association that's now been in existence for 45 years in Watford and the surrounding areas. We have a wide range of Black History Month activities taking place this month. I've lost count as to which one this is within that program. We are recording these occasions, and you will see further down as we go along some details of some of those other things that we will be putting on. Now, sorry, I've lost track of my thoughts. Just to say that, as far as tonight goes, if you check on your computer, you'll see that there is a chat function. And as we go along, please use that to identify anything that you think you might want to say. And it helps sometimes to aid recall if you can put something in there, and we'll pick those as we go along. As all of you have already done so, I would suggest that when you're not speaking, please remain on mute, because often we then end up with some interference if you don't do so. So I would like to leave it there, I think, for now, and to welcome your host for this evening, who is also one of the members of our committee that's organizing our Black History program, but she's a director of Soul to Soul, or the director of Soul to Soul Connection, and she's going to take us through the proceedings this evening. So you can give a virtual hand and welcome Zora Johnson. Zora, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And welcome everybody to what I hope will be a lively discussion around Black love and Black romance. As Clive has alluded to, I have been a member of the steering committee for, well, about 20 years now, certainly a member of the African Caribbean, Watford African Caribbeans Association. And certainly in the last couple of years, I've been quite active and instrumental in providing support in developing what I consider to be quite a lively programme of events for the community. Yes, 20 years or more. My son's now 35, and I've certainly been a member since he's been a teenager in the early days. So yes, well over 25 years. Yes, my involvement has been even though I have moved away from Abbots Langley and I lived there for 15 years, I'm now based in the Midlands, but still very active as much as I can from where I live in supporting the association. So Clive, thank you for allowing me to stay on your books essentially as an honorary member. And for those of you that have met me in the past or haven't met me in the past, thank you very much for coming along tonight and listening to my talk. I'm going to share my screen with you now. All things being well, the presentation will be there. Just bear with me a moment. I'm just popping up the slideshow. Bear with me a moment. Let's just see if you can see what I can see. Wretched computers are never working. Okay, so I'll just minimize you from the side so you can't see me. So what you can see there is our logo essentially, and the name of my organization is called Soul to Soul Connections. How did it come about? Well, I've been divorced for a couple of decades now, and in that time I've had a number of relationships. In that time period, I've tried to engage or to connect with the man of my dreams using various tactics. I've done the online dating and been fairly successful, but really the gentlemen that were turning up for the dates that we'd connected with online didn't quite match up to the image and the description of what he said he was able to do. And certainly what I found was men were taking pictures where they had hair and teeth and were turning up and with false teeth and with toupees. So that didn't quite sort of pan out in those years. I then tried what is known as bespoke, an introduction. I then tried going to an agency. It's actually an Asian agency, and they had a small subsection for African Caribbean individuals. And they're based in London, and they tend to match Asian couples. And I asked them whether or not they're likely to be successful in their subsection of African Caribbean men that I was obviously hoping to be connected with. And they said at the time they didn't have any gentlemen on their books, but they had loads of Englishmen who were quite keen on being connected with Black ladies, which really didn't suit me. So off I trotted to another agency, and they were based in Marylebone. They were charging something like £7,000 for the pleasure of being dated or connected with somebody. And what they said to me was that they didn't have any men on their books who would I would be suitable for. And I didn't quite understand what they meant by that, and felt deeply offended and walked away sort of feeling quite dejected. But what actually happened was the outcome of that made me absolutely furious, that there was no services for African or African Caribbean individuals who catered for our community. It seemed crazy to me that we were going to other communities to do the work in terms of romance and supporting us around the aspects of love. So the seed was sown about 7 or 8 years ago, and I sat down and I thought, let me see what I can do in terms of making the wrongs right for people in our community. I was looking around, and certainly there was no other organisation that I could turn my hand to. Hence, Soul to Soul Connections was developed. Now, I put it to bed shortly after my ideas came to fruition for one thing or another, and life's just trundled on. And what I actually found was last year I was very poorly with COVID, and I made a promise to myself that if I survived the experience, my near-death experience, that when I got better, I would focus my efforts on getting what I'd started 6 years before off the ground. And hence Soul to Soul Connections was born out of that. So I am the founding director. We launched formally in July of this year. I started off with a business partner who's experienced in psychology, but his commitments meant that he could no longer commit to the company. So we tend to engage from time to time on various activities, and yes, he's still in the background but not active on a regular basis as when we started. So my background, I'm actually a clinical educator and lecturer, and so I wear several hats. So you might see me in other environments talking about clinical matters, because that's essentially what I do. I train doctors and nurses and what is known as a trainee nursing assistants to do the job of clinical management or clinical intervention. So I wear a couple of hats, but this is my baby at the moment, and I'm really proud of what I've produced. So don't be confused if you see me in other environments talking about things like the menopause, the andropause, or other clinical matters, because that's essentially what I've been doing for the last 40 years. So just a little bit about the company. It was established by myself. We are a unique bespoke introduction service for melanin-rich men and women, and we are actually the UK's only service providing this level of connection in our community. What we aim to do is to provide a reliable method of finding a mate for the souls of melanin-rich individuals who are looking for friendship, long-term unions, or even marriage. Now, I say that we're the only one, A, because there is an organisation called the Association of British Introduction Agencies, the ABIA. And if you look at their register, if you speak to them, if you're looking for a bespoke service or an introduction service, as I was doing 6 years ago, they don't actually have any other organisations like ours registered. And certainly when I was setting up the service, what I was doing in order to be compliant and transparent in our services was to set it up in accordance with their standards, so that from an audit point of view or an accountability point of view, there was a point in which our service could be held accountable for any of our clients. And certainly what has happened over the course of the last 6 months is that the association will only accept organisations that have been operating over the last year. So we are July, August, September, October. We're only in our first quarter, but I'm hoping by next summer we will have, certainly by next July, we will have overcome the hurdle, and certainly we'll have the kite mark in terms of the quality and the standards, in terms of being regulated by an organisation that will ensure that we are living up to the expectations of our clients. So why did I believe that this service was necessary? Well, as I've explained for some time, a short while ago rather, I think COVID over the last year has given us a lot of opportunity to engage in online activities, which we probably would never have done had COVID not arrived. And certainly what I've done in that time is to tune in to online conversations, Zoom meetings, Zoom events. I've done quite a lot of research online and listened to the state of individuals who are single. And I've listened to the stories, and essentially what's transpired out of that for me is that there is a disproportionate number of single men and women in our community who are 40 years and above. And I qualify that by sharing a story with you. I've got friends who never married, I left school in 1979, and I got divorced in the early 90s. And in that time I had my children, and obviously I became divorced. Now, for those friends that I left school with, who didn't get married, who didn't have children, are still single and childless. And I've been absolutely fascinated by and despair, in fact, by the lack of, for what they say is availability of men. Now, I've gone on quite a number of chat shows, not chat shows, other organisations, and listened to their programmes. And for me, what's actually transpiring is that there is high levels of hopelessness, disillusionment and disparity in our community. Certainly there's a tremendous amount of frustration. And when I was listening to a lot of conversations of what men were saying about women and what women were saying about men, what I found was there was a tremendous lack of trust. Men didn't seem to trust women in terms of their expectations, and they were pandering to the whims of what social media was saying about Black women, that we were aggressive, that we weren't worthy, that we weren't worth dating, and all this sort of language, which I found very, very troubling, I have to say, because the women around me I felt were absolutely wonderful, and they certainly didn't have the traits that a lot of the Black men were thrusting at us. And I just felt it was a little bit unfair, and at some point someone somewhere needed to change the narrative. You know, we just could not continue going down this avenue of beating each other up, when actually what we both want, both men and women in our community, we both want long-term loving relationships. That's the bottom line. However, the path to achieving that is clearly not going to be as easy for some as for others. So quite often people say to me, well, how, you know, when they come to join the service, they ask me, what's the likelihood of the outcome of being successful? I don't see many available Black people out there. Certainly I don't come across enough Black single men, and I certainly don't come across men were saying to me, where are the women? And certainly the women are saying to me, well, where are the men? And I thought, well, actually what I need to do is look at the data. Let's strip it down. Let's try and actually work out where we are in terms of the population of Black people living here in the UK at the moment. So I pulled up some data from the census. We've since had a census since 2011. I think we had one last year or the year before, but the results haven't been published. And as it stood then, in the population of England and Wales, it doesn't talk about Northern Ireland or Scotland, it talked about there being 56.1 million individuals living in the UK, out of which the population of Black people has been quite static for some period of time at 3%, 3.3% to be exact. The data that I accessed earlier on today said, as of last year, the 2020 rather, the data is likely to have gone up to about 68.2 million, but we won't get any official results from that until they publish them on the government website. Now, the second largest group, according to the government data, is that individuals from the Asian community make up the second largest percentage of the population of people living in the UK, followed by Black and other ethnic groups. And we actually total 3%, 3.3%, which amounts to 1.86 million. Okay, so, you know, we do exist, even though I think what we have to admit is that we are now a minority within the ethnic minority groups. It may well have been that in the 50s and 60s that we were one of the largest groups, but as we stand today, with the white ethnic groups from individuals from Poland who've come over in recent years, they now take up quite a large slice of the population. But as it stands, we've got 1.86 million individuals, and we've got other ethnic groups that sort of total between 2.1%, between 1 and 2%, sorry. So we do exist in significant numbers. Those numbers once upon a time were probably larger, but you know, we are significant. So then I thought, right, so if we got 1.86 million individuals, how many individuals out of that number are in terms of their age group? So what you can see on this next slide, the government website has developed this slide. And this slide looks at the number of individuals within each Black ethnic group that falls within each age range. And as you can see, this particular chart peaks at the age group of 45 to 49. And then as it goes up to 50 to 54, you can see this gentle decline going right down until you get to the age of 60. And then it sort of plateaus off until the age group spans 80, 85 and above. So essentially what this chart is saying is that there is a significant number of individuals in our community. Most of us are living and aged between 40 to 59, where it genuinely then declines. And what it says to me, if you are single and you fall in this age group, which is often the largest age group that are single, there is evidence, in my view, that you're likely to fall in that 1.8 million category. So in terms of the analysis, what we're looking at, people from Black and ethnic groups aged between 18 and 49 are essentially just under 1/3 of that population. The largest group that I've already mentioned is aged between 45 to 54, after which the chart shows a steady decline, plateauing once you reach 65 to 85 years old. And I believe this is the highest likely group of single male and female Black Britons. So when we are looking about engaging and matching individuals, whilst the quantity isn't off the scale, and it certainly isn't anything like the white Britons, I do believe that there are opportunities in our community where the match can be made. It's not impossible, but I do believe that the opportunities are there, because many people have said to me, but Black men aren't available. Do they actually exist? And I've done a number of talk shows recently. Earlier on this week, Radio Manchester, the presenter there contacted me and wanted to look at it in more detail. And in fact, I've had quite a number of individuals from BBC Radio presenters who have approached me. I have been on BBC Radio Derbyshire, I've been on BBC Radio 3 Counties, I've been on BBC Bristol, and if you want to go on my website, you can listen to all of those in a podcast, because, you know, in my view, if the BBC is sitting up and taking notice of little old me, there really must be some what am I looking for, the word? There must be some genuine interest in terms of the issues around Black love. So when we are then looking at the groups, I then thought, well, let's just drill this down and actually look at the proportion of men and women, because it's really important if I'm going to develop a service that is robust and has got legs and is able to withstand the test of time, I need to actually understand what is the proportion of Black men to Black women in our community. And you can see from this chart that I've got from the government website, you can see there is an equal balance in our community. Blue, the dark blue representing men, and the light blue representing women. And you can see in the 3 categories below that there is a balance of Black Africans and Black Caribbeans in the data that the government have published. So you can see here there is a marginal difference in the Black Caribbean community of, I think in this particular graph here, there's a slight emphasis on Black women than there is Black men. But in the main, I think we could argue that there is an equal amount of Black women and Black men in our community aged 45 and above. Right, so where are they based? So if you're going to set up a business or a service like mine, you need to actually know where you're going to target your key markets. And again, the government website has evidence that where we are living as a community, in the main, we're concentrated in around the London area. And this is by far the largest amount of data. In fact, 58.4% of our population are based in London. When I was interviewed by the presenter at Radio Derbyshire, he said, you know, everything is very London centric. You need to appreciate that there are communities, or Black communities living throughout the UK. You cannot make a service that is only based on individuals living in London. And whilst I appreciate what he was saying, and in all fairness, those communities are quite small. And if you are, like myself, trying to develop a service that serves the needs of your community, you really need to put your efforts where your community is based. And certainly the data stacks up for my efforts being concentrated around the London, in and around the London area. And that does include 3 counties areas, the areas around London too, which include the home counties, such as Kent, Hertfordshire, Surrey, Bedfordshire, and all those surrounding counties. I would consider that to be within the London area too. Now, I want to share with you a video that I came across. I was really quite impressed with, and it's only 5 minutes, but it does talk about Black love in a very, very positive light. For me, my service is around turning around the negative narrative around Black love. You know, from the outside, other people seem to think that it's impossible, that we're not capable of loving in the way that other communities do. So I just want to share this 5-minute video with you.
Look into my eyes, describe what you see.
Lots of amazing moments. I see.
Oh, shit, this ambition to just drive me.
So I need just to make sure that the sound is on, sorry.
Same, because it's so amazing. Oh, I hate when somebody says you have a lot of potential. But you do have a lot of potential.
You're the world's most dedicated parent.
Like, I know you're my sister, but you just like, I don't know. Like, I'd be like, I didn't give birth to you, but you're my child. Like, I feel like it's an older sibling thing.
You already know I'm your biggest fan. So, you know, that comes real easy to me.
I appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that.
I love your openness. I love your abundance of love that you just put forth in this world. I love that smile. I mean, thanks.
Like, I love to just look at you. Sometimes when you sleep, I just like stare at you and like want to cry. You know that song, Have You Ever Loved Somebody So Much? Like, that's how I feel about you.
I just love you. I just can't get enough of you. You're just I just love you.
With you, for the first time in my life, I did everything right.
I tell you I love you every day, but your heart and the type of person you are, I would never want you to change that.
You are always trying to empower other people. And I think that that's one of your best attributes, you know, and you know, I just love you to death for that.
The way you talk about racism and Black people, how you worship Black people is so phenomenal to me. You intend to touch every single Black person that you see. And it's so evident, and that's how you inspire me. And you are so consistent with that, and I love that. Everybody in our life knows that you just lift them up, and I love that. That is insanely inspiring in a world that says, oh, but you are supposed to actually also support things that are white adjacent as well, or white.
Yeah. I trust you more than any other man that will ever walk this earth. Remember a couple weeks ago, you were watching TV in the den or whatever, and I just came and I just curled up on you? Yeah. You were available, you know, for me to come and be vulnerable.
And it was like, I usually like being alone on those days where I'm so down, but it was like you being there, just making me laugh and taking my mind off of things. It was just, it was great.
You've just been taking care of everybody my whole life. I watched you take care of everyone. So I just want you to understand that it's not time for you to put yourself to the back burner again. I want to hear your dreams, and I want to see what my mom is about to unfold. Like, I want to see that, and I think a lot of us do right now.
The greatness in you, it's always been there. So I've had to love the levels of greatness I've watched you come into, and shit, you come from me. So that makes you like double amazing.
That made me really proud of myself. I feel like that's the single most important compliment that I've ever gotten in my life. It really changed the way I see myself in a lot of ways. You saying that.
You do.
And it was super well put, and it just really it's super resonant. So thank you. That really made me proud.
You're so welcome, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We're the most beautiful couple in the world. And there's like no limitations on the things that we can do.
I love the person that you are and the support that you give me and the beautiful art that you bring to the world.
That's nice. Aww. That's nice. Don't make me cry, okay? I got makeup on.
To answer your question, I love you totally and holistically. Don't ask me to spell holistically.
I'm just so blessed that I have you. I can't put into words like how much I love you.
Wow. I don't want you to ever forget how much I love you. I don't want you to forget that I am who I am because of you. And nobody can take that away from me.
I love you for you. You know, I've always loved you for you. Everything about you is a special quality as far as I'm concerned. And as baby girl say, I love you to the moon and back.
You would think after 28 years we wouldn't cry so much.
Yeah, right.
It's like loving you just comes natural to me. Like, I didn't have to think about loving you. Like, it's like second nature.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, just as much as
I do apologize.
I breathe every day, that's how I love you.
Just touches my soul. Your love is like soul food. Just does something for me.
Right. So what I'd like to do is get some feedback before we move on. And there's quite a number of things in the chat. Clive, are you there? Clearly not. Marilyn, are you there?
I'm here. Where do you think I should?
I do apologise. Yeah, okay. What I'd like for the audience to do is to unmute themselves, please. And
by the way, you're still sharing.
Yeah, it's fine because I'm going back to the presentation in a minute. What I would like to do is to hear what people's thoughts are in terms of some of the data that I've shared, some of my findings, and yeah, I mean, that video, I mean, I'm in tears. I had to get my tissue. And I think it's such a powerful short video about people expressing their love for each other, which is not something that we often hear in our media. You know, we are victimized criminalized all the time. So I'm not sure who's got.
Sorry, Zora. By asking people on mute, we're getting some distortion.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Well, if they could mute themselves until they're ready to speak, we won't get the distortion. Or if they put their hands up, then we'll know who wants to speak.
Veta was unmuted, so it may be that she has something to say to kick us off.
Who was that? Sorry, Michaela. So sorry.
Hi. Yes. Hello. I just thought. Hi, I'm Michaela. Hi.
Okay. Hi, Michaela.
Hello. It's a really lovely presentation. I just, with me, it just felt very. It's very alien. I think that me personally, growing up in a Caribbean family, love is not something. It's not that we don't love each other. It's just I've always, in my culture, when we're not kind of very expressive how English culture would express love. So we're more of doers. So, you know, this love is more, it just from my experience, you know, my personal experience, is more functional. So, so for example, my grandparents, I've never heard them say I love you, and jokingly, if they were joking, my granny would say, "Oh, Herbert, you don't love me," and he would say, "And I pay the bills." You know? So that's my granddad was very, very functional. His way of quote unquote love was to be, you know, the breadwinner, look after the house, you know, look after the animals on the homestead, that kind of thing. Of course, he loved his wife, but I think that love, how it's expressed in a Western way or an English way, is very different to how Caribbeans express love, from my experience. Because I remember coming over here for the first time and seeing girls holding hands or giving a kiss, that kind of thing, and making friends at school, and girls wanted to hold my hand, and I found it very alien. Why you want to hold my hand for? You know, I just to sit. I don't know how to feel about the video, because it's a positive video. It's wonderful. But I just wonder, is it, to just pull it apart, is it more of a westernized / American, white American / English way of expressing love? Do we do it in a different way? Is there one way of expressing love? And if there is or isn't, is it something that's unhealthy or healthy? Yeah, that's kind of what's going through my mind.
All right, thank you very much for that.
Can I just say, it's just following from what Michaela's said there. It's an interesting thing, really, because actually I've been thinking about this probably over the last 24 hours, the distinction between what you say and what you feel. I think we tend to have this focus on the words like love. And actually, sometimes it's easily said, but actually doesn't actually reflect what people feel. And so I think we have to kind of make this distinction as to, and maybe find a way of conveying that without using these kinds of stereotypical words, like, for example, love, that actually, if, and I've said this in the past to people, so you say you love me. So what does it actually mean? What does it actually look like? There is the words and there's a feeling, and they aren't necessarily connected.
Oh, interesting. Right, okay.
Clive, can I ask you something? Following on from that, do you think that men see love differently to women? Not love, but their definition of how they express love differently to women?
That's a very deep question.
I know,
Because-
I know, sorry.
I was going to say, perhaps you might want to think about that, and we'll bring somebody else in. I'm just going to
yeah, let me have a little think
I
about
don't
that.
want you to hang on, Clive. I don't want you to speak on all the men, on behalf of all the men in the world, because that's a very loaded question, and there may well be differences in the way that men and women feel and express their love. So yeah, thank you very much. We'll come back to that in a minute. Was it Avetta, did you say, Marilyn, who had her hand up? There's quite a lot of stuff coming in the chat as well. Avetta, would you like to unmute yourself and share? Are you still there?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Sorry, did you want to say something in terms of what I've shared with you so far?
I mean, it's interesting watching the film and listening to people's comments. Yeah, it's true. I mean, my parents were together all their lives. I think a lot of our parents were, and I think they loved each other, but they never said "I love you" and weren't romantic. And it was very sort of, yeah. So they did things for each other and for the family. And my dad was very much a breadwinner, and my mum was very much the passive one. And I saw that when my dad died, mummy didn't know how to do anything. She'd never paid a bill, you know. So our generation is very different. And I don't know, I think a lot of our men learned how to be not necessarily the breadwinners, but the one who was the lead. And I've found in my life that in my relationships, I've had to sort of hold back. Sorry, my daughter's singing in the background. I hope she's not disturbing everyone. I found that I've had to sort of step back. I'm divorced now. Yeah, there were struggles around power relationships. And I think it's a real challenge because in the old days, in inverted commas, men tended to be the breadwinners. They worked, our mums had 6 children, etc. Now we have fewer children. I was earning at least twice as much as my husband. And so economically, we were not equal, but in other ways we were. But it's a challenge. And most relationships I've had, I've earned much more than my partners. And that can bring issues. So it's an interesting challenge that we have. I think I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. I think we're hearing quite a bit of your daughter sing, which sounds marvelous, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
We're getting quite a lot of that feed coming through.
Sorry.
No, not a problem. Don't apologise. It's just wonderful, but it is actually overriding what you're trying to say in terms of the level of sound.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry.
Sorry, Zora, I could hear everything. So.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
Indeed. Is there anybody else who want to make a comment on sort of where we are in terms of our loving relationships? And I think it goes without saying that our parents have come from a community and a time where the open expression of romantic love just wasn't apparent. I wouldn't say that's necessarily right or wrong, but don't forget, if you imagine through slavery, from the time in slavery when any of the slave masters saw open expression of romanticism, they would separate the families, especially if they realized there was any evidence of romantic engagement. They would separate the families on the plantation to stop the likelihood of any romantic engagement continuing. So that was all part of slavery. And so it may well have been that these behaviors in terms of lack of open expression has been handed down as a result of not wanting to be torn away from your loved one or have your children ripped or sent off to another plantation, which was often the case. These were all behaviors that were learnt to stop families from breaking up. because the moment the slave master saw any evidence of attachment, he would often send him to another site. So we have to remember much of the behaviors that we bring to the table today, especially in our community, from the past, are things that have been impressed upon us and they've adopted these behaviors in order to survive. They want to stay together in terms of as nuclear a family as they could, given the circumstances. But these behaviors, because it would tear them apart, were things that were learned. So, yes, I mean, Marilyn, what are your thoughts?
One of the things that I would say is the point that Michaelia made. I was like, oh, that's interesting in terms of, are we being just moved down a direction to fit the stereotype of how another demographic demonstrates love? So that's an interesting one. I will say, when I first started out as a coach and therapist, God, 21 years this month, can't believe that. But for the first 9 years, I was a relationship coach. So one of the things I was always talking about is the fact that people have different ways of expressing themselves, different ways of knowing they are cared about, cared for, loved, etc. So it was, and I guess nowadays, one of the most common ways that people term it is things like the love languages. So that point just made me think, oh, that's interesting. But hopefully, if people are more knowledgeable about what works for them, then being able to sit down with your partner and say that what that is, be it the open expression or knowing that someone is doing something for you is how it's demonstrated. But it did kind of make me think, oh, that is interesting, actually, in terms of, is it stereotypical? I don't think it is necessarily, because as humans, we do have needs. And if those needs aren't met, that then spirals in all sorts of different ways. But it was just a really interesting perspective. And in what you shared, I mean, I love the video. It was really lovely to watch. And I also like that you brought in so many stats. I'm like, man, this woman is really thinking about the whole process and breaking it down and da-da-da-da-da. So yeah, I'm going to be interested as this journey rolls on in terms of what else you discover and what you find when you really are out there in the world. So I think it's a case also of watch this space, because I like the fact that you're doing the demographic piece as well. So yeah, very interesting. Plenty of food for thought. So thank you, Zora.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Does anybody else have anything to share?
I'm going to come back in, actually.
Okay.
Just think, and you're absolutely right in your response to Michaela, that I can't speak for every other man. And you could probably judge by the fact that I'm on this call that I'm not like every other man. Because actually most of them would be too scared and whatever to be here. But I think there is sometimes, I think, a bit of a confusion between what we might call some Western expectations around the way relationships should go. But equally, there is this thing about, I go back to this, what you say, but actually in this case, related to what you do. And now, I think there's a Western anticipation that you would express love with words. So you've got to say 10 times a day, I love you. And if you don't do it, then you don't love me. As opposed to, you might do 1,001 things, but you might not say, I love you 10 times a day. So you don't love the person. And I think we have to get away from those kinds of characteristics that actually doesn't define the reality of what I might call real love, which is real deep caring for someone. And whether you say it or not, the reality is you can demonstrate that in different ways.
Well, we're going to come on to certainly the love languages a little bit later in the presentation. But I hear what you're saying. When I think quite often when we end conversations these days, what I heard recently was a bolt on where people just say, as they're ending the conversation, I love you. When I first heard that, when I heard people saying that so frequently at the end of a conversation, I actually wondered whether or not they were genuine or not. And this flippancy in it, or saying that they loved someone, for me was quite an unusual concept. And I probably a bit like what you were saying, Clive. When I talked about my love for somebody, it was normally in the context that was very different than me saying I'm going out to the shops and someone saying, okay, and then me saying, love you, as a bolt on. And I was just like, oh, that's almost like a throwaway comment at the end of a conversation, rather than the context where it's a loving moment where something genuinely has been done to support the other person. And then out of that, you might then say, oh, you know, I care for you, or I love you, and whatever. So a bit like what Michaela says, you know, and what Marilyn is saying, you know, it may well be that we're becoming more westernized in terms of our expression of our love. But, you know, this is now 2021, and what was good enough for men and women in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we have to appreciate that things have moved on. So if you are with a partner and your love language is similar, as in expressions of behaviors, love being one of them, one would expect your partner to express themselves that way, because if they don't, that's going to cause tension in the relationship, and, you know, and frustration, because one partner is going to say, you never say that you love me, even though they do. So whether or not you do it openly by expressing it verbally, or whether or not you do it through actions, which is normally in acts of service, one would still expect either partner to be willing to express their love or support for the other one. And I personally don't think that's got anything to do with a Western expression. That's got to do with your genuine love for your partner. And, you know, it may well be that our parents from the West Indies, and Michaela is quite right. I don't ever remember my parents saying they loved each other, even though they were married for 62 years. And I don't remember hearing it. I don't remember seeing it. I don't remember seeing much evidence of it. I actually remember seeing two very miserable people feeling compelled to stay with each other because they had no way of leaving each other. Where was there to go? Certainly I know that my father expressed probably some level of infidelity in order to meet his needs. And so that all happened very discreetly when I was a young person, because he desperately needed it. My mother was a very austere woman, very disciplined woman, never expressed openly her love for my father. And he ended up having another woman in his life for a good many years. Now, I'm not going to make any comment in terms of how they lived their lives. They both survived it. I don't think either of them were particularly happy for long periods of time. But my father lived his life in a way that he got the emotional satisfaction that he needed. My mother didn't seem to need it.
Zora, sorry, whilst you catch a breath there, I mean, I'm not sure your father is around to defend himself, but putting that aside.
Don't you worry, I'm sure he would.
But I think that there's something that we're missing, even now, despite the fact that things have changed. We have to understand that there are some cultural differences. So, for example, to make an analogy, if you came from the Caribbean or Africa, there was generally a tradition that, for example, you wouldn't look certain people in the eye, you know, so because that was seen to be disrespectful. Now, if you look at this, basically we've been brought up within a cultural tradition. It does mean that the way some people have adopted to that tradition will vary, which then means that people are coming from different perspectives. I think probably the key is that maybe people at the beginning of a relationship do need to talk about some of these things so that you can understand where there are differences. because even the way in which you would say hold hand going down the street, as Michaela referred to, it wouldn't have been tradition in and still isn't tradition in some of our cultural environments. So it's not all historical, because actually we're still a bit of a melting pot. For example, the fastest growing section of the African and Caribbean community now is the African community. And actually, I don't believe that would be part of that tradition. So I think we have to have a bit of understanding. So there has to be a balance, and we have to try and understand some of these differences as relate to each other, because otherwise one would have one expectation, the other has another expectation, and actually the two don't meet.
Yes, but I mean, I don't want this to be a conversation between me and you solely, but what I'm saying is, what I would say to that is that, yes, there are, excuse me, there are cultural differences, and one would expect that. However, this time's moved on, and what my mother would have expected as a woman in her late 50s, early 60s, or even earlier in her relationship with my father, is not what we necessarily have to adopt now. And I don't necessarily think it's about being westernized. I do believe that we have the right, if we want a relationship that meets our needs. And so what you're saying is, okay, so your parents wouldn't ever be seen holding their hands, but is that right? Is that a natural expression of your love for someone? What makes it right, not holding your hands? And in my relationships, if my partner doesn't hold my hand when I'm walking down the street with him, I'm very upset by that. And I think, why would he not want to hold my hands? When I see couples walking side by side, I think that's quite unusual. I think, why are they not engaged more closely? And it's really up to that individual, I'd say. I don't know if I don't consider myself to be needy either. For me, it's just a natural expression to slot my hands into my partner's hands and to walk along the street. That's for me is very normal. And you're looking rather pensive there.
No, you've told me that it's not a two-way conversation. So
yes, indeed. I don't know. All right then. So let's carry on. Does anybody want to say anything? Anyone want to make a comment? Put your hands up and share before I go back to the presentation. Okay, so I've given you all the stats around where we are in terms of our community. I think I pointed out there is at least 1.8 million of us, out of which the largest sector of that group is individuals between 45 and 59. Let's just see if I can get the slide to move on. Doesn't want to do that. Okay, so from my point of view, and I really do want us to be able to join the dots for those individuals that are interested. It really is, well, how can my service help individuals in our community? This level of spontaneous loving has got to return. We can't just keep beating each other up. I mean, we're going to beat ourselves up into an existence where we don't exist anymore. In terms of children in our community not having parents who are loving parents, or being entered into single parent households. I mean, I became a single parent not through choice, but because my marriage didn't work out. And I think there are many single Black women out there who would dearly love to have a partner, who would dearly love to be in a relationship which has got legs, where it can grow, where there is hope, where men who have been disenfranchised up until recently have the opportunity to come forward and say, yeah, I'm not perfect. Yeah, I don't earn £1 million, as has been mentioned by one of our members, but I do feel that I've got something to offer in a relationship. So how we do this is to facilitate connections between men and women, using what we consider to be, or certainly what I consider to be, a hand-selected bespoke approach. We take on anyone between 35, in fact that's been lowered from 35, from 30 to 99 years. And how we do the matching is we send a link to our member asking them to complete a love languages assessment. We send another link to them asking them to complete what is known as a Enneagram personality profile. Once they've done that, they're then invited to speak with me over 1 to 2 hours, and they then get put on our database. But we also, when we are matching individuals, we look at their personal preference in terms of the love language. What does it say about them? When we're looking at the Enneagram, we're taking off more layers and looking and probing and really sort of looking at the personality. What are the key things that drive that individual? And in terms of failed relationships, how has this behaviors, their previous behaviors played out in the relationship, which has caused it to fail? Now, strangely enough, I've got a number of professional women on my books, and there are trends that I've noticed that are showing up in these ladies who come forward, and certainly their standards have been incredibly high, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. However, because they're very professional and they have reached they have excelled in their career lives, what we have found is that their career personality tends to overlap in their personal life, so that the things that drive them in their place of work in terms of performance and efficiencies are those that spill out into their relationships. And quite a number of the ladies on my books have realized that this behavior, they need to sort of sit back and relax into the relationship a bit, and that they might have to do some self-reflection in terms of how the relationship moves forward, because they do realize that once they excel and they're very, very good at their jobs and high flyers, that approach is not going to work in a relationship. They really do need to look closely at their behaviors if they want a successful outcome. So what I'd then do is look at the compatibility of the men that I've got on my books, and likewise, if it's a man looking for a female, I use the evidence from the love languages assessment and the Enneagram to actually match them. In addition to that, their lifestyle and their personal interests really are important. There's no point in trying to match people with very, very diverse lifestyle interests, because it's simply, again, not going to work. So there are lots of elements that need to be considered before the genuine match takes place. For the high flyers, we go more deeply. We look at the socioeconomic drivers and whether or not they actually stack up in terms of their financial declaration. So if someone is saying that they're a high flyer, they would need to evidence sort of financial aspects and assets that they have about their lifestyle, because I want to be a member of the Association for British Introduction Agencies, the ABIA, it's very, very important that we do our due diligence on these individuals, because in my view, anyone can turn up in a decent, well-fitting suit and a hired car. However, he could be, someone who's in financial hardship, really looking for a gold digger, someone to take him out of his financial mess. And so it's very important from our due diligence point of view for our clients from either sex that they would need to be able to evidence certainly their financial status. The other thing that we take them through is a DBS. So they would have to be willing to undergo a disclosure and barring. Again, that would flag up whether or not there's a history of violence or activities that might harm the other party. And again, this is all part of our due diligence, that we would ensure that someone undergoes this process so that we've got the satisfaction that we are not exposing our members to anyone who could potentially harm them. And again, when you're a single woman, there's lots of incidences on the news recently where women have been attacked, And no matter what we do in order to safeguard the safety and well-being of our clients, we can only do so much as an organisation to ensure that the due diligence is applied. So I believe that it's time for change. I do think that the discussion, the fact that we're sitting here having this discussion, suggests to me that there is time for change. The conversations that you're hearing on all these different social platforms, again, suggests that time has come for change. And I actually think that we're ready for it in our community. I do believe that what we do as an organisation is about engineering that change. And certainly I want to see melanin men and women in our communities willing to reclaim the steps that are needed in order to make the change happen. All right, so it's not about talking about it, it's about making the change a reality. And it's really about black magic. So if anyone can remember the 70s when there was an advert of chocolates around black magic, it was certainly the emphasis on that made me think about, yeah, black magic, let's make it happen. We can do it, providing men and women are willing to do that. So if somebody wants to hop on board, we offer 3 packages at the moment. The bronze package is where we offer face-to-face introductions, and that's really where I take individuals through the process that I've just mentioned. We have a silver package where we are putting on social events in addition to, we are putting on social events periodically. And that enables our members to meet other members of the same of differing sex, because it's not everyone who finds it easy to engage with someone online or through just looking at a picture. We don't do online dating. It's always through a picture and mutual introduction. And so this silver package is also the same as a bronze package. But for if somebody wants to attend an event, and we've got one coming up in December, it's going to take place at the Shaka Zulu restaurant. For that event, we've got the same amount of men and women coming to that event, so it's balanced. We know that even though there are more women in our population, they are very open at talking about their singleness, whereas our men are much more hesitant. And so what I tend to find is that women will go out socializing, expecting the same balance of men to be there. And this could be at any event. But for ours, it's important that I get the same amount of men appearing as women, or else the event just simply won't go ahead. So the High Flyers package, at the moment it's $79.99 per month, and these are really aimed at individuals seeking to meet somebody else with the sort of similar lifestyle. Recently I had a professional lady turn up and ask me whether or not I had a number of other men in my High Flyer package or in my books, and I had to say to her I didn't at the time, and I really suggested that, you know, she gives it a couple of months, we're still working on expanding the service, but I wouldn't allow her to join because I simply didn't have sufficient men in my High Flyers package that I could introduce her to. So that's on hold for her at the moment. But the moment I start getting gentlemen coming forward who are showing some signs of all the aspects that I talked about in terms of the qualifying aspects, then I'll be more than happy. I've got her details and I shall be on the phone straight away. It really is about making black magic happen in our relationships. And this couple that you can see here, they're essentially part of our USB, and you'll see them cropping up on our webpage and on other marketing material if you choose to investigate our services a bit more. So this is a little bit more about the silver membership. In terms of the benefits, it gives the individual the opportunity to meet someone face to face in a relaxed environment. If you go on our webpage, you will see a little bit more about it in detail. Again, the high flyers package, people say, how do you know if you're a high flyer? And I think, to be honest with you, it's very difficult. I didn't want to be so specific that I ruled everybody out, but essentially it is based on someone's socio-economic status, as well as their lifestyle and their occupation. In the main, these individuals are incredibly ambitious. They tend to have life goals, expectations, and aspirations. I allow them to rate themselves. If someone comes to me and says, I consider myself to be a high flyer, I'll ask them to tell me a little bit more about what they do in terms of their lifestyle, what they do for a living, etc. And then we will make a decision whether or not they need to just sign up for the bronze package or to go ahead with the high flyers. As I've already said, they must be willing to undergo a deeper registration assessment and probing around their financial status, and they must be willing to have a DBS check. So I talked about the registration process, looking at the love languages, the personality profile, and the registration, which I've now sped up. I can do it in 1 to 2 hours. Before it was slightly longer. Their details are based on a database, and in terms of contracts and anything, if they want it, they've got total access to it. If they're not happy with the process and they feel really, you know, what's the likelihood of Zora being able to offer me a successful match? If they don't think that I'm likely to be successful at any time, they can cancel their registration, but they do get a cooling off period in the first 14 days after registration. So in terms of the match, it tends to take place after an extensive search. Usually I have a rationale. I will ring either party, take them through the details of the individual who I believe I've made a good match. They then contact each other once they exchange details. I go back and say, look, to the lady, please expect a call from this gentleman who they have agreed is someone that they want to meet. Ladies in the main do like to for men to do the honourable thing in terms of the chase, let's say. So I arrange for the gentleman to ring the lady at a particular time. She then knows to expect that call, and I allow them to have the discussion, but it's always consensual. So if you want to become a bronze member today, take action if you're still single and you're on the call, or log on to our website if you want a bit more information. It's www.soul2soulconnections.co.uk, or you can contact me on my mobile, which is 07918 155625, or you can email me at info@soul2soulconnections.co.uk. So the floor's now yours. Let's open and widen the debate. So who would like to share any of the comments that I have made? Anyone? Have you all gone? Shaz, would you like to make a comment? Is it my sound? Marilyn, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just sorry, I'm on your website getting the link.
Oh, right. Okay, doke. Thank you. I wonder if everybody else is too. Someone's put something in the chat. Let me just open the chat. Oh, you have. Thank you very much for popping that in. Okay. We've got Nancy. Nancy, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi there. Hi, everyone.
Thanks for hopping by.
Thank you. It was just interesting what you were saying about sort of men and sort of their affections, because I really haven't had any issues with men telling me how they feel.
Are they black men?
Black men, yeah. And perhaps not quite your high flyers, but very affectionate and very open with their feelings, certainly in private anyway. So I've never really had any issues with anyone expressing their love, if you like. It's really the actual person and their character or perhaps what they do or don't do for a living. It's really that I have sort of issues with, or that I think maybe friends may have issues with. So it's not really affection, it's more the actual character of the person.
Tell me a little bit more.
I think what I've found, and I've really only dated black men, is, I mean, yes, everyone puts their best foot forward in the first sort of couple of months, but then, you know, after the first couple of months, you know, you really then get to see the sort of the true person. And it's for me, it's not quite that, because I think what some people, let me say, I think what some people do is they don't sort of show you the real kind of person, and you only really find that out after about 6 or 9 months, and if they're really good, after about 2 years. So I mean, that's only one person, but it's mainly about sort of 6 to 9 months. You can kind of gauge a person and, you know, see what they're really about. So for me, it's really, I don't know if quality of person is the right word, the right kind of person, I think.
You might be asking, are you in a relationship now?
No, single.
Right, okay. And the last relationship you had, in terms of the character, what disappointed you about this individual, if you don't mind me asking?
I think for me, it's the type of person they were. I mean, I would say that I think my sort of description, without getting too many details, personal details, is that they behaved, I consider their behavior to be inappropriate, but I think really if I'm to step back, that's how they roll and this is how I roll, and we just roll differently. And I just don't really like the way that they roll. So it's not to say that they're wrong. I mean, I would describe it as perhaps not quite right, but it's really different people, and I wasn't sort of willing or unhappy or not comfortable to compromise. I would have made myself very unhappy to compromise, so that doesn't really make sense. But essentially, they were a nice person. They were able to express their affection for me. You know, none of that was an issue, but it was really just how they roll, you know, how they gauge things, their readings of situations. We just came at it very differently. So yeah, I mean, that was just really kind of sad. You know, if he perhaps maybe had rolled in the circles that I'd rolled in, then maybe perhaps it would have worked out. But I've certainly seen people roll like him, and I don't really like how those sorts of people roll. I mean, I don't know if roll is the right word, but I can't really.
I was going to say, I'm a bit old-fashioned, so you might have to sort of expand.
I guess
the way they, someone roll, what does that mean?
I mean, the way they live their life, their views, their, you know, how they express themselves to others, how they live their life, the person that they are, you know, how they solve problems with themselves and other people, how they engage with other people, you know, their communications with other people. It's sort of everything about them. It's how they are.
Right. Yeah, okay. I take that on board. Yeah, indeed. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Got a couple of people with hands up. Marilyn, your hands were first.
Well,
Shaz will come to you in a moment.
Go to Shaz first, because you hear my voice often. So let's go to Shaz. And then
okay, that's good of you. Thank you. Shaz.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it was just the comment you made earlier on about you'd spoken to some professional women who you said that the way that they succeeded in their, I think it's roughly professional life, they were bringing it into their personal, and you were saying that they were going to have to address that. And I just wanted you to perhaps say a bit more. But I suppose my thought when I first heard you say it, and maybe it was maybe I misunderstood, but I was thinking, is that any different for professional men or white professional people? Do they have to behave differently in their personal and professional life, or are you saying that something's peculiar to the professional Black woman who succeeds, that they behave in a certain way that is not going to be productive in a relationship?
Right. So I can't vouch for white professional men because they don't come there. I don't provide a service for them, and so I cannot make a comment in terms of how a white professional man would behave. Having worked with them and some incredibly arrogant white men, I don't know how they translate their behaviors into their relationships. I have no idea. However,
sorry, or men, would that be as well? So black men, sorry, professional men.
Right. So
Yeah,
strangely enough, the black professional men that are on my books, again, I would say their behaviors are very, very similar to the black woman. And I have to sort of remind them that I am not a job agency. They've come to me to help them find a relationship that's going to work. And unless they look at some of their behaviors, there's nothing I can do to help them once they get into that relationship, because the same problems that they've carried over from the past are likely to be the ones that they carry forward. And so they need to address some of these behaviors. And when I say these behaviors, they tend to be very professionalized. So whilst they are very good at getting the accounts done in the office, the leadership, there's very little evidence of the loving side of their nature coming through. And essentially, that's what my service does, is to connect them so that they have a successful, loving relationship. I'm not finding them a job. I'm finding them someone who is going to meet them emotionally. But if they behave in the ways that they have done when I've gone through the assessment, and for me, I've had a number of red flags that have been raised. I'm like, whoa, you need to be thinking about what you're saying, because my goal is to engage you with somebody else who wants someone who is loving, who is patient. They don't need this efficient sort of things, because they're successful women in their own right. They can do a lot of the things that the men can do. What they're looking for is someone who is kind, who is patient, who's willing to reflect on their behaviors and actually say, I really want this to be a success. Perhaps I need to revisit some of the ways that I behave, so that, that all the hard work that I do in order to get them a match is likely to have a successful outcome. Now, people aren't single by chance. Some of us, or some individuals, choose to be single because that's what suits them. But the people who come to me are looking for a partner. So if they go through the love languages assessment, and if they go through the personality profile, again, that keeps flagging up this level of personality that demonstrates to me that they're incredibly good at doing what they do at work. But are they going to then carry that over into relationship? Because we talk through it and I sort of say, so what do you think this is saying about you? Now, I've had gentlemen who say, well, that's not me at all. And I said, well, are you the one that did the assessment? And they said, of course I am. I said, well, what do you then think about what you are choosing in terms of the outcome? There must be something that reflects on what the results and the analysis says, because unless you're not doing it with the level of openness and transparency, you're not going to get the right result. So one gentleman said, I'm going to go back and do it again because I think I was a bit rushed. And I said, that's fine. Okay, I'll let's have another discussion. He went away and he came back and he said, guess what? And I said, what's that? He said, I got the same result. And I said, well, surprise, surprise. So he was also then going to start challenging the results. And I said, look, a computer or a system will only give the results that you put in there. There's no point in arguing with me about the results because I'm not the one that's done the test. So this level of denial about what was coming up was clear. This chap didn't like the analysis, what it was saying about him. He was the one that had done the test. He did it twice. So what does that tell you? It tells me that he's in denial, that there may be a little bit more work to do. My job is to still find him someone, irrespective of where he is in his personal journey. But I was very hesitant in trying to put him forward because I had fears that this level of aggression and efficiency was not going to work with the ladies on my books who were looking for someone who was warm, chivalrous, very charming, successful, and really he just didn't have the qualities that my ladies were looking for.
Thank
Does
you.
that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.
You're welcome. Marilyn.
Sorry, I'm sat here rolling with laughter now because it leads very nicely, and you've partially answered my question because I've got 2 questions for you. I'm just thinking about the man in denial. Sorry, it's just I'm just imagining a scenario. But what my second question was, do you do a Patty Sanger? She's the millionaire matchmaker. Patty goes in for them. She will tell them about themselves. And it's actually very hilarious to watch because, and she also does a thing where I'm not suggesting you're going to do this, but just to give people context if they don't know what I'm talking about, she actually puts them on dummy dates and then she watches them. She listens to them. She actually records it and then she plays it back for them and she points out and says, look, my ladies or my gentlemen won't stand for this, or this was very aggressive and da 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 da. So one of my questions was going to be, are you coaching them around those things? But you partially answered that in terms of pointing out, but also just keeping it in reserve. So do you want to say anything more on that before I go to my second question?
Well, I don't know who this lady is, Patty Sanger. I thought it was a menu, something on a menu actually. So is she the lady that does the millionaire matchmaking?
Yes, that's her.
Well, she's probably charging millions, and I've already told you what I charge. All right. And what I would say is that the men that have come to me are very hesitant in even paying that. And, you know, I have to have a service that is viable. And so for me, it was, what's the entry point for the charge? It has to be sustainable. It's over a 12-month period. And people need to get value for money. And it is about offering them up to a maximum of 4 matches. I have to match people's expectations within the 12-month subscription. So in terms of, do I offer that level of input? Maybe if I was charging £1 million, I would have the resources. I don't. However, I do try and allow a prospective member to undertake the test, this assessment, and it's up to them to pick up the nuances in terms of what the Enneagram is saying about them. Now, the assessment is generally 2 hours. I don't cut it down any more than that because it does require exploration. Many individuals who come to me they're so shocked that just answering a few questions can actually say so much about them, and they are shocked. It's just like, do you know what? That is like spot on. And for some people, it's a real revelation that this Enneagram has got them to a T. And what I would say is both men and women who've come to my service, and we are, you know, relatively new, they find it fascinating that when, because the Enneagram will look at the positive aspects of their personality and the negative. Now, what do most people tend to do? They tend to hang on to the negative aspects and bypass the positive things, because everybody will have pluses and minuses to their behaviors. So when we look at it, for me, it's about, well, it says this about you. How do you feel that it might have had an impact on past relationships? And if they are savvy enough, and if they're transparent enough, and if they're open enough, they will actually say, let's say, for example, somebody likes to be touched, and their partner in the love languages assessment said, my partner never touched me. He never expressed his love for me. And if someone sees that as a real need and their partner doesn't give it, it's a problem. And this is why I say, well, did you get that in a previous relationship? No, because I wanted this and my partner never gave me that. He was giving me gifts, and all I wanted him to tell me was I looked great in the dress that I was wearing. He never once said to me that he loved me or he found me attractive, but he kept buying me gifts. I didn't want any blooming gifts. I wanted his time. I wanted him to tell me this. And so it's about, well, this is the outcome of the assessment. So it's important. And so we prioritize them, the 3 categories that they consider to be most important. And so I said, well, when we're trying to match you with someone, it's important that we align those qualities in your partner, because if he can't give you what you're looking for from a loving relationship, it's simply not going to work. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, absolutely. And my second question, and this is going to be a yes or no or maybe, do you also cater for same-sex couples? We had a conversation, let's say, at the film screening last weekend about James Baldwin, and we kind of went on to the question of his sexuality. There's a bit I heard in the film where he talked about a particular woman and was saying if segregation wasn't in place, he alluded to the fact he would have pursued a relationship with her. So we had a bit of a discussion around that. So in your service, is it something that you cater for, or is it not yet, or you're just open to whoever comes to see you?
No, it's clear on the website. It is not we don't offer same-sex services, because I didn't see that there was going to be a demand. And I feel that if somebody wants a same-sex relationship, we'll be more than happy to signpost them to other services that will probably give them more of a successful outcome. So it's not something that's going to be in the pipeline, because I do believe that there are many other services, if they Google it, that can cater for that. And I can't see that we're going to be moving down that road. But it's, as I say, my challenge is to get men to come forward to actually, I've produced a number of videos, and because the media expresses our men as being strong black man, it was only on one of the other Black History Month events last week or the week before, or early last week, where it was all about mental health. And it talked about the numbers and disproportionate numbers of Black men being seen in mental health clinics, in hospitals. And I kept thinking, well, the data says there's an equal amount of men and women around, so where are they? And it seems as if a disproportionate numbers of our men are either in prisons or they're in mental health institutions, and the healthy ones that are available aren't the ones that are coming forward and saying, I'm under a tremendous amount of pressure. All the imagery that's painted about us being strong and black, my feeling is that they are probably the most frailest individuals in terms of their personalities, what they have to overcome in our community. And the fact that they need to be supported emotionally for many men is something that they see as a weakness. And because they are, the impression of the media is that they are overtly strong, overtly able to carry the world on their shoulders. And the other thing is that the other thing that the media do is hypersexualize our men, so that they're not seen as ordinary individuals with needs and wants. Either they're hypersexualized and all they want is sex, or they are misdiagnosed quite often and being treated for mental health issues around bipolar disease, schizophrenia, and other mental health problems, or they're seen as hyper aggressive and serving time. So it is a very mixed picture. But yeah, I do. The gentlemen that have come forward on my books are gentlemen who have recently retired, who are businessmen, who have been in they've had a professional life, and that their lives are very different now, and they are looking for a good woman, and women are looking for good men. It's quite simple, really. And I'm just the go-between between the two, making the magic happen. I just wondered if there's anybody else who wanted to come
Marlene
in.
looks like she has her hand up.
Oh, right, thank you.
I
Yes,
guess that's from last time.
yeah, thank you. Marlene, what would you like to say? Welcome. Hi, Marlene.
Hi, I joined you a bit late, but I think I can answer the question for the shortage of our men. And some of what you've said is true.
Have you got them hidden away, Marlene?
I wish. Some of what you said is true, but a lot of it, our men are in demand. So a lot of other races they're with, whether it's Indian, Chinese, or white, that's one problem. Another problem, they do not have problem finding women because they're in such demand. And as you said, a lot of them are either in mental institute, locked up, on drugs, got some sort of problems. There's just so few that's around for the colossal of women that are doing extremely well. And I think that's a great deal of the problem for our men. And I don't think they feel the need to go to agency to find a woman. I think they know they can find them quite easily by, I don't know, just going for a drink or whatever. So we've seemed to have this problem in our community for ever since, you know, I can think, and even the generation before me. So it's quite a grim picture I'm painting, but it's a part of reality, you know. Even when you go out and you see like endless women and so few men, and people are saying, where are the men? So, you know, the ones you've got, great, but there has been an acute shortage, and I can see the next generation don't seem like they're going to be waiting for their own men like our generation did. I think they're going to move on to another race. So that's how I see the problem, where the problem lies. And our generation really would like one of their own. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there is some value in what you're saying in terms of our men being attracted to women from the other race. But, you know, I think this is where I've said to you, the narrative needs to change, because there is an assumption that if you're a successful Black woman, that you're aggressive, that you have got too much to say, that you're hard work, and all the sort of negative things. And I know for a fact that is not true. You know, equally, I think Black men they're not, you know, angels in disguise. And I do believe that the way that some other cultures, their women are socialized into not having a voice, into being very subservient, to be expecting all and sundry from bad behaviors from their men. And we as Black women, we are not socialized like that. We are, you know, it's taken centuries for us to get to this point. And if we have a voice, most of us tend to use it. Now, I think, you know, by Black men hopping off into other cultures, they might think that they're getting off scot-free, but that is not the solution to the issue. It is about, you know, I do think we as Black women perhaps also need to look at the way that we communicate. The press doesn't help us in terms of the things that we say and do. We need to help ourselves from that point of view. And sometimes when I do listen to some of these talking shows and Zoom events, I do believe there is the opportunity for some of us as Black women to be much more sweeter, to be much more receptive to the way things that we say and behave. You know, having this hard, fast approach, it does not work all the time. And whilst I wouldn't for 1 minute suggest that we adopt a submissive type of behavior, I do believe that there is scope and space for being much more kinder, much more softer in the way that we come across. It doesn't mean to say that we lose any of the values in terms of who we are and how we go about it. But, you know, when you talk about the strong Black woman, you know, straight away, there are negative connotations around that. You can be strong and you can be intelligent, but it doesn't need to be aggressive. And I think, you know, we need to help ourselves as Black women sometimes, because we're part of the problem as well sometimes. And sadly, our Black men, they know that they're in demand and they know that they can go elsewhere, and often they do. So, you know, our Black men do need to think about what they do and why they do it. And certainly I know in the early days, they were hopping because of social mobility. They felt that being seen with someone outside their race would help them in their careers, would help their level of acceptability in the way that society viewed them. But, you know, there is a huge movement these days to keep the essence of couples from our community together. Now, when I was doing some of the focus group work in determining whether or not the service was warranted, because I certainly didn't want to go down the route of doing something that I wanted rather than what the target market or the demand was. So many people came to me and said, you know, I have waited so long for someone like you to come along and offer us a service like this. And that has been said to me time and time and time again. So I know from the individuals that are on my service, have hopped on board, and from the things that have been said to me by the individuals who shapes the way that the service is now developed, because it's because of their demand and their desires is what I have used to set up as a framework for the service. It's what they've said in terms of what is reasonable to ask someone to pay, and I gave them a few categories. You know, in terms of the vote came out at the payment that I'm now charging. You know, in terms of all the other aspects about the service, asking would they be willing to undertake an assessment, it was the feedback from that, yeah, that's a good idea. How else are you going to know who it is, who your clients are? So we then looked a bit more deeply, as my business partner myself did at the time, and him with having a psychologist background, we've come up with these 2 assessments that are the preliminary process for engaging with our members. And it certainly is flagging up the truth in terms of someone's nature, because I can have an endless conversation with someone and still not pick up the nuances that are coming up in terms of the love languages and the personality profiles that the Enneagram is doing. Now, these 2 assessments, they're free. We send them a link. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes to complete. I asked them to take a screenshot and to send me what their screenshot has in terms of the pie chart, and we look through it in detail. So that's essentially how it works. Now we are coming towards the end, and I don't know if anybody wants to share anything. Clive, are you still there? We've got
I'm still here. I've not disappeared.
Stepper, we've got Michaelia and Avetta. I'm just checking who else is on the call. Christiana, oh, and we've got I'm not sure who that is. Would anyone does anybody need any more information, or would anyone like to make a comment? That would be really great. Anyone want to raise their hand? Clyde, is there any?
I wouldn't mind saying something following up to what you just said.
Is that Marlena?
Marlene.
Marlene, yes. Okay.
What I'd like to say is, following up to what you said, a lot of young Black men in their younger days or 30s or whatever, they think it's great to have a white woman. And then when they get to about 40, 50 and realize that they're getting no real satisfaction, they've been allowed to do what they want and it hasn't benefited them, then they decide they want to now come looking back to their Black women. And
right, can I stop you there a minute, Marlene? What evidence are you in a relationship at the moment?
No, I'm not. No.
Right, okay. So
but I've met Black men that is in their late 40s, 50s, and they've had relationship with other races, and then they decide they want to now be with their own. And sometimes they find it a struggle because they've lost connection with who they are.
Right, okay, very
and
interesting.
I've actually met people like that. And when you try to interact with them, you just feel that they just don't seem to be a part of you anymore.
A part of you? Can you...
like your race, they seem to can't communicate like a Black person should be able to.
Right, interesting. Right, thank you for that. Joanna, have I pronounced your name correctly? Thank you, Marlene.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to go back on the point that you raised on the talk. I think that two things happened quite recently. One, there was a mixed race tennis player who pulled out of the match because of emotionally feeling upset.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one was the US gymnastics woman.
Yes. Yeah.
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 It was a lot of people were really shocked because suddenly Black women were vulnerable. Suddenly,
appearing to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Appearing to be vulnerable. And I think often we're forced into a situation where we are assertive because we're going to work and we're having to make ourselves known to get ahead, to earn the income, to bring up our children. We don't always want to be that person. No. But we're forced into that situation because our men are not there. And equally so, I just wanted to say, sometimes when women are a bit quieter, their men are not even happy that they are quiet, and they want them to speak up, and they want them to say something. So I think we always seem to be having a balancing act. And when we sort of look back at like our parents, often women were quite strong. They kept the family together, and this is what we've grown up with, and this is how we tend to be. It doesn't mean to say that we necessarily want to keep that role. We do want to be looked after, just like anybody else. Unfortunately, our men don't seem to realise that is what we want. We want to succeed, but we also want to be able to say, okay, you take over from here. So I think we are stuck in a situation now where we're in a country where we can see how other people are. We've got this background from our history of how women are. I feel that we're quite stuck, and the younger generation are not taking that on. They're just being themselves, and if that person is white and they happen to fit with them and they're happy to go with them in their careers and their life, they're happy to go with that person. They're not.
Can I ask if you do you mind? Thank you for that. Can I ask if you're single or in a relationship?
I have to say I'm in a complicated relationship.
Oh wow. All right. Okay. Enough said.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that point that the media doesn't help us. It often shows Black men
with other races, and very rarely do we see a black couple.
I have to say the media are very, very guilty for that. I've met someone recently who went on a shoot for the filming of a particular advert, and I think it was an advert for Sainsbury's, and when it came to matching two of the actors who were from the same race, they decided that they wouldn't actually air that, and they chose to have a mixed race couple. Now, increasingly what you will see on the media are a number of mixed race couples, and the media do it on purpose. They do it because what they're trying to do is to make mixed race relationships much more acceptable. And it's all the nuances and it's all the subtleties and all the subtle signs that we're seeing around the way that we live. It is coming into our subliminal psyche and into our subconsciousness, where we are being fed this information, where people are now beginning to consider it to be acceptable. Had it been enough, had they have more couples from similar cultural backgrounds, as we're occasionally seeing, it would be considered more acceptable. But Hot Stepper, please share your thoughts. We can't hear you. Are you saying anything? Hello? Are you near your mic? What's going on? Hot Stepper, you got your hands up. Do you still want to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I had my headphones in to listen, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
No, okay.
I hope I hope I haven't missed the question, the answer to my question. I had a phone call from my daughter, so I had to answer that one. But how successful have you been with your matching since you started?
Well, it's early days. Those that I didn't want to be in a position where I was forced to make a match because of the low numbers when we first started of individuals on our database. What's actually come to light, which has been quite interesting, is the admission that men and women have a type, which I have to say I didn't realize at the outset would have such a prevalence in matching people up. Now, in the early days, I would make the match and tell them about each other without disclosing the image of that individual. And invariably I would get, oh, she sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah, send me her details. Or I would get, he sounds absolutely wonderful. Send me his details, which I did. And the moment I showed them the image of the person, suddenly it was like, he's not my type. And I think, well, we've just had a very lengthy conversation about the match, and he was brilliant when we talked about him before you saw him, and now suddenly he's not your type. So the question was, how many successful? Well, I've made a number of matches. Have they gotten married yet? No. Are any in long-term relationships yet? Too early to say, because the service is only just started and they've only just started their relationship. So in terms of numbers, the numbers are low because we're very new, but my expectation is that there will be more success over a period of time.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, the second thing I was going to mention was, I think it was it Joanna that said about the media and, you know, the mixed race couples and stuff, but then that's been happening for a very, I mean, that's like in TV programs and everything, do you know what I mean? That you know, it could be a, you know, black guy with a white woman in a relationship. So it's always been on TV and that's been made normal. Whereas black women with white guys, that's only just beginning to, do you know what I mean, be shown on TV.
Yeah, indeed.
No, sorry, I was just, yeah. So
well, the media are driving it. You see, the media are driving all of this, and they're taking the choice out of our hands. And as I said, they are feeding us with these images subliminally, and feeding them to us. So what was once upon a time inconceivable in terms of white men and black women, quite often, I mean, I've seen quite a number of adverts where, let's say for Halifax, young couples are setting up home, and you've got the white man with the black woman, and in quite a number of other ads, you've got this sort of scenario which you wouldn't have ever seen once before. And so that's how the media play on our subconscious. They tell us subliminally that it's now acceptable. And they're saying to white men increasingly through this messaging, it's now time that you can cross boundaries. For those of you that have fetishized having a black woman in your life, we now consider it acceptable for you to make that move. It should no longer be a fantasy or something that you play with that was frowned upon. Now, I'll share with you that back in the late 70s, or mid 70s, I met my ex-husband. We happened to go to the same school with each other. And as adults, our relationship flourished into our early 20s. And we eventually married in my late 20s or my mid 20s when I had my son. But he was an Englishman. And I can assure you that it was frowned upon when we got married in the 80s. I was the worst thing that could ever have walked the earth. Certainly in terms of the black men in my lives at the moment, who never came forward and showed any interest in me until the day that I got or showed signs of marrying outside my race. So, you know, I do know what the experience is like from both sides. In my heart of hearts, I've always wanted to have a relationship with a man from my same cultural background. Accessing him has always been the challenge in certainly the ways and the lives and the lifestyle that I've had. But I have engaged with black men on shorter relationships. Sadly, they've never expanded in the way that I would have liked. But the time that I have been with them has been exquisite. And there has been something about that relationship that tells me that I'm not the only one, that my feelings are sincere and real, and that, like other women, we need to just hold on to that and let's just make it happen. Marlene, you'll be the last lady that we speak to before we round up tonight.
Okay. What I wanted to say is just to reiterate what you've said, because I remember in the 60s, I'm giving my age away now, and the 70s when I was quite young, in the 70s and things like that, you'd watch program and the first thing they made it as a joke, but don't bring home a darkie. And now they've gone the complete opposite and showing couples interracial. It's not your own race anymore. And I'm just thinking, they've gone from don't bring home a darkie, we won't accept anyone if they're not one of us, to always continuously showing in adverts or in films or in comedy show, it's always, obviously, it's always more the men than the women, but it's changing slightly now. And a man with a white woman. And like you said, it's encouraging it, and then people are becoming more acceptable of it. And back then, black women more so had no attraction or felt embarrassed, like you said, because of the things that would be said about a black woman with a white man. You think, oh no, I don't want to go there, I'm not interested. And also we naturally gravitate to someone that looks like us. But it was so frowned upon, and now it's gone the opposite. It's like encouraging people. Some people have said that because they're of a weaker race, even though they tell you the opposite, is because to come get some different blood into them to strengthen their race. I don't know if that is actually facts, but something is going on why they've changed the narrative, and now so many things are mixed couple, and I can see it's going that way, because now I see the younger women, they're more, they're not sitting back like the older woman to wait for a black man. They're going with whatever that come their way, because I know in the past I rebuffed a lot of men because they weren't black, and I'm thinking, why did I? What am I sitting waiting for a black man for that don't even exist?
Well, I can assure you they do. It's about giving them the confidence to come forward, which is, I think you missed the first part of the presentation, Marlene. I mean, I've showed some data. They do exist. The numbers are there in terms of the men and women in our community. And I showed the stats in terms of what the census, not the last census, that was earlier on this year or early last year. And I've done my best to sort of give you some understanding in terms of the underpinning of individuals of both male and female, and the proportion of them and where they are demographically placed throughout the UK. Anyway, I talk on, and I am very much aware that we have our 2 hours is up. Clive, would you like to make the closing remarks, please? I'd like to thank everybody who's been on the platform tonight, to thank them for their input. It's been most inspiring and interesting. And certainly I do value your comments a great deal. So thank you very much indeed. Clive, over to you.
Thank you, Zora. It's really a really much needed and interesting conversation that we've been having. There is a challenger for our community, because actually I believe that what has happened is the systemic process that we've been subjected to. And actually it goes back long before people arrive here in the UK. It goes back to the Caribbean even. There has, and of course, when we come here and we are in the so-called mother country, then there is this greater tendency for that pressure to be more so than it was visible, maybe even in the Caribbean, even though it existed there. I listened to the conversation, and I'm reminded of a conversation I heard on the radio a few years ago, where I presume he was young. On the radio, you can't necessarily see people. A young black man made the observation that black women were ugly. And I had a white commentator who had to be arguing with a black young man about a statement of that magnitude. If you go back to the 50s and the 60s, I don't think you'd have heard that being said, because we just didn't have, we had not internalized that self-hate to the extent that we have got. And that's part of the problem. And that applies to both our men and our women. We have to begin to come back to this idea of self-love. And when we begin to start loving ourselves and be proud of who we are, I think whether we're men or whether we're women, I think we are going to be able to develop a really strong, loving, caring relationship between our men and our women. But there's some education to be done, because whilst we have the self-hate, which I believe there is that, nobody will tell you that they hate themselves, but actually a psychologist, I suspect, will tell you how that works. I thank you, Zora, because the service that you are developing and services like that, I think does have a role to play if we are actually going to try and create a bridge to bring up our men and women back together again. Thank you all for joining this conversation this evening. We will have this on the YouTube channel so you can follow. Thank you, as I said, for joining in. I have put in the chat the other 4 Black History Month activities that we have happening this month. And so you'll see that we actually have on the next event is on Tuesday, the 26th, when we're actually looking at a facet of life too, which is around our engagement with the democratic processes that we have within this country, as we are here and we're here to stay. We're then going to look at an important issue on the following day, looking at making our finances work for us. And then on the 30th, we have some cooking demonstration and some rapping that will be going on. And then on next Sunday, we have our finale, which is our quiz night. So if you can, please join us. If you see the link on the website, you can also find the Zoom links there, and the website link is on in the chat too. So thank you all once again on behalf of the African Caribbean Association. Thank you.
Before you wrap up, can I also thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my service on the platform. I do appreciate it doesn't necessarily tie in with WACA's themes, but I am very appreciative of the opportunity. So thank you.
So thank you, and thanks everyone. Have a good evening, and I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Well, did anyone want to make any final observation? If you want to unmute, you might want to use the clap function or whatever, if you found this interesting, or you can put something in the chat. I know some people put some stuff in the chat already, but yeah, Marilyn, you're clapping. So final, in the next 2 minutes, if anybody did want to say anything, then please do now.
We had Auburn, who was incredibly quiet all night.
Who is that?
Auburn.
Yeah, I was looking at him and he's only showing the top of his head.
He was in the picture early on, Marlene, and I think. I think
was he the only gentleman on tonight? Was he the only gentleman on the platform?
I'm a gentleman.
Auburn, we'd like to have a good look at you, being as you're the only man about.
Hang on a minute. I'm on this platform too, you know. Orbin, where have you disappeared to? I don't think it's a. Come on, push the camera down. We can't see you, and say something.
We can't see you.
Adjust your camera downwards so we can see you. I believe you're unattached. So the ladies are looking to see whether or not you're good. You're a catch.
You're a good candidate. We still can't see you.
You're muted, and they still can't see much of your Orbin.
What's he up to with the camera?
I think he's trying to unmute because on an iPad, and I think he's trying to work it out. You've forgotten already, Orbin, how to do it.
Is he your friend, Clive?
He's actually my cousin.
Oh, well, you need to train him up.
Yes, Orbin.
I don't know.
Yes, look, people would like to see a bit more of your Orbin. They can only see on top of your head.
I don't know what happened, Clyde. I can't see you either.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
Hello?
No.
iPad, and it's not working. No.
Anyway, everybody else has been talking about their status, Orbin. Are you attached or unattached?
Yeah, well, I'm not very good at these things. It's not working.
All right, forget about the camera.
I'll go on my...
Are you a single man? That's what we want to know.
He's gone. Where's he gone? Yeah, Orbin. Sorry, no. The question is, are you single or are you taken?
Am I what?
Are you single or are you taken?
I'm single.
Oh, there you are. So
well, we look forward to welcoming you soon then, Orbin.
I find it very interesting. I'll probably have to get in touch with you.
I do hope so. You'll be welcome anytime.
Another man.
And just in case people wanted to know, unfortunately, I am taken. So
I know that, Clive. I've known you
Are you
for a
feeling
while.
left out, Clive? Are you feeling?
I
is
am
that what
feeling
you're
left
saying?
out, yes.
No, Clive would have too many, and he can't cope with the one he's got.
Okay, so I think we're going to stop the recording there,
Well,
Zora.
just one thing.
That
before you
might
stop
be
the
an
recording,
idea. That might be an idea.